So between 1823 20, he was engaged in treasure digging in his local area. I don't believe he found any treasure that I'm aware of, but he still had this reputation. Is that correct?
Okay, well, the historical record's like incomplete, of course.
Yeah.
We don't know, we have a few stories that, let's say, like I was telling the story of William Stafford that was participating. Joseph Sr. came to his house and asked for a sheep, and one of his sheep that, there's a treasure, and William Stafford went back to the property, and that's probably on that hill that they're digging. Joe Smith wasn't there digging. But he was observing from the house, and they dug and they did this magic stuff, and they still didn't get the treasure. So Joe Smith Sr. goes in the house to inquire of Joe Smith Jr. So this sets up a dynamic, shows you a little bit about what the dynamic of the relationship Joe Smith Sr. and Jr. have, right? And Joe Smith Sr. goes and asks, what happened? And Joe Smith Jr. says, I watched the whole thing in my stone, and the spirit guardian came up. You didn't do the magic formula correctly, and the spirit came up and moved the treasure. And William Stafford, said that was the only time when they got that sheep that that was the only time that money digging became profitable to them. So that was his little humor for the story. But William Stafford's participating, and that's the story that he gave for the failure, and Joseph Smith Sr. accepted it. And now, was Joseph Smith ever successful? Well, you heard the story of the pin that Martin Harris told. So there's probably a lot of stories like that. I mean, so that story would be what I would say was a situation of opportunity that Martin Harris requested. Well, he says anyway, he requested Joe Smith to use the stone to find it as a test.
Yes.
It may not have happened like that. Joe Smith might have volunteered or hinted, and then Martin Harris requests, "Hey, oh yeah, use that stone," And if Joseph Smith, so my surmising would be, as I know psychics and how psychics work, and how magicians work, how mentalists sometimes work, it's actually using an opportunity that falls in their lap in a way, and exploiting that opportunity to create a miracle or miraculous situation. And mentalists tell stories, if you read mentalists, that actually reveal their techniques, and they talk about these things happening, and also things that they just guessed at, and it blew their minds how it came true, and how it worked out. Because they do it so often, they start getting very intuitive about it, So Joe Smith may have seen the pin sitting back from Martin Harris, fall, and he knew where it was, and he just pretended, and that was a successful story. If he didn't see, he could have made an excuse, go, well, I don't use my gift for those kinds of things anymore. Those kinds of things, God commanded me to only use my gift for translating and righteous purposes, that kind of stuff. But so the situation is that he was in control of the situation, and he could make it happen the way he wanted. In situations where he's not in control, or psychics, so to test a psychic, you always have to put them in a situation where they are not in control. Like Uri Geller on the Johnny Carson show, was not in control, couldn't make it happen, right?
Right.
So that is it. So when he lost the 116 pages, that would have been that's a situation where he was not in control, but he could have used his seer stone to recover those pages. Didn't happen.
Mm,
He
yeah,
didn't
to
even
reproduce
suggest
them.
it. Nobody suggested it, evidently, I guess. And if they did, what would he say? You know,
Doesn't it say in one of the sections that, you know, the people that have the 116 pages might just change the words and
change
then
it,
expose him? That's
expose him, which is impossible for them to alter a handwritten manuscript.
I suppose you would see the
Of the
alterations.
handwriting of Martin Harris. You know, Martin Harris knows his handwriting. Everybody knows his handwriting back then. Anyway, we don't now. We know
Yeah.
his signature, but we don't know his handwriting. But back then, it would have been obvious for anything to have been altered.
Okay.
Um, so it's an excuse that I don't buy. But he could have said, well, he waited. Actually, the revelation to replace the lost manuscript didn't happen until right when he finished, and how does he supply, he's near the problem, solving the problem of how to supply the beginning, because he's holding out. Maybe it might be recovered, maybe Martin Harris might find it. So the revelation is the D&C 10, is it? It's dated May 1829, and June is when David Whitmer comes to Harmony and takes them to Fayette, and they finish the last month. They finish the beginning part.
Yeah, because I believe they continue from, is it Mosiah, like right after
Yeah,
the 116 pages. So
right.
they continue with Mosiah and then they come back and he finishes with First and Second Nephi. Uh,
Yeah,
you know, at the end of the Book of Mormon translation.
yeah. He actually lost the first part of Mosiah. That's why he had to have the bridge, the Words of Mormon, to bridge the small plates with the large plates, because the first couple of chapters of Mosiah are missing. Well, how would Mormon know that the first part of Mosiah was missing? So uh exactly where, because there's like 13 verses at the end of the Words of Mormon that talk about King Benjamin and Mosiah, that kind of bridges that gap. um
Oh yeah.
so anyway,
So going back to the treasure digging. So do we know approximately how many treasure digging sort of expeditions he might have been involved in before he goes and works for Josiah Stowel?
well, there's the one on his property. uh a lot of them are not dated, so you don't know if they happened before or after. This is because he dug a little bit after. There's a one story told by the staff, one of the Staffords, is that when the Emma comes, that they got actually they're money digging, and they get in Joseph Smith's drunk, and he gets in a fight and tears Joseph Smith's shirt, and Emma has to come and put her shawl over him to hide him as they go away. And so that was after.
Okay.
Um, so he's participating anyway in a money dig. I don't.
Okay.
You assume it's a treasure seeking situation. So I don't know. Now we have one statement by a guy named Jesse Townsend. And Jesse Townsend was Lucy Smith's Presbyterian minister in the early 20s, before um, uh, Benjamin uh, Stockton. Benjamin Stockton came and was the minister when Lucy actually joins. But before that, she had attended, but wasn't a member or anything. Didn't join or have her children join.
Right.
She just attended, probably with some of her lady friends, and while they were probably living in town. still. And he said in an 1831 statement that Joseph Smith pretended to find treasures or lost objects. He pretended to find lost objects a little too well.
Okay.
And the implication is that he thinks Joseph Smith stole them, hid them, and found them. Now, so that would have been early on. He may have been finding things, doing stuff. You know, he had a seer stone for a reason. There just wasn't a lot of stories, but he did the digging of the well, or the digging on Miners Hill, happened before Josiah Stowel.
Yeah.
So, like I mentioned, Willard Chase and Alvin Smith were digging under the direction of Walters the magician, Luman Walters.
Mm-hmm.
And they fired him. And then, according to Abner Cole, who owned the hill, the mantle of Walters the magician fell on Joseph Smith. And Joseph Smith took over that dig as the main seer.
Okay.
And according to Lorenzo Saunders, and remember, Lorenzo Saunders with his family lived on Abner Cole's property as renters. According to Lorenzo Saunders, Joseph Smith could see in his stone a golden throne inside the hill. And he also could see the Indian king, Lamanite king, the Indian king sitting on the throne.
Right.
A spirit, you know, as a spirit, I guess, inside the hill, in a cave, a cavern, I guess. So Joseph Smith Sr. started digging a tunnel to get to the treasure sideways in the eastern side of the hill, into the hill, and he dug, according to some estimates, 40 feet.
That's a big hole. Or a big tunnel. Big tunnel.
That you can stand in.
Right.
So Lorenzo Saunders said it was finally abandoned. Okay, so Joseph Smith Sr. is digging at his son's direction, this tunnel, and Lorenzo Saunders says he was digging day in and day out. Finally gave it up. The enchantment was too strong or whatever. That's the excuse Joseph Smith gave Isaac Hale and Josiah Stowel down in Harmony, Pennsylvania. The enchantment's too strong. You can't even see it anymore. So at Enoch Saunders' direction, he directed his sons to put up a big door. Or no, or the money diggers put a door there. Somebody put a door there, but they tore it down eventually. They put up a door and it had a lock. Like there was two posts next to the door, next to the tunnel, and a door at the face to keep people out. Enoch Saunders told them to tear it down, and they tore it down. And this is what Lorenzo says: they sunk it into a coal pit. They threw it in the bottom of a coal pit and buried it or something. And they caved in the opening of the tunnel to keep, so that people wouldn't keep going there. Well, Enoch Saunders died on the 10th of October, 1825. And so this all takes place. The tunnel, Joseph Smith saying the king's golden throne is in the all before October of 1825.
Okay.
Well, it's like the 25th of October. So it's not on October 10th, but sometime before that, this all takes place between Well, I don't know if Alvin's still alive or not when the senior Smith is digging, right?
Because he dies, is it November 1823? Is that right?
Yes. No, November 19th,
Right.
1823. So we know that Walters is there before Alvin's death, but all I know is Joseph Smith and Joseph Smith Sr. is involved with this hill before October of 1825, sometime before that, after Walter was the magician. So I don't know
Okay.
the exact dating, but it's before Stowel comes in October of 1825, and then they traipse off, and in November they're digging in Harmony, Pennsylvania. But Simpson Stowel is Josiah Stowell's son, is living there in Manchester. Probably writes his father, and that's what he heard that Joseph Smith could see things that the natural eye can't see.
So he had a reputation as
As a seer.
a seer.
Yeah. And so that's going on quite a lot with Joseph Smith, and his reputation is exceeding Sally Chase's anyway. So and Chase lives just down up the road from the Saunders. They both live on the Canandaigua Road. So the Smiths live on Stafford Road, and the next road east is the main road, Canandaigua Road, that runs from Palmyra Village on the east side of Palmyra Village, all the way down to past Manchester Village, past the Hill Cumorah, past the Manchester Village, up to the village of Canandaigua, where the Smiths did a lot of business, which is about 11 miles south from Palmyra. So yeah, that's the main road, and just over the township line between Palmyra and Manchester Township, right there is where the Chase family lives. And the Smiths live the same spot, but on Stafford Road. So all they have to do is go over the hill to the Chase family. They're just over the hill.
Right.
And the hill that I'm talking about, over the hill, is this one hill called Sharp. There's Sharp Hill, is where rumored in later history where Joseph Smith dug a treasure. Also dug a treasure, offered a dog, or maybe it was a sheep also, a sheep as a sacrifice on this hill. And the hill is like right in front of the Charlie Chase's house. So he's like running a money digging operation.
That's one thing that disturbed me, was realizing,
Right.
some people claiming that there was animal sacrifices, including, I think I've heard of sheep and dog sacrifices in some of these treasure digging
Yeah,
expeditions. Was that
yeah,
just appease the guardian spirit,
yeah,
supposedly?
yeah. Blood sacrifice. I mean, this is Christian magic. This is uh, ancient Israelite practice of animal sacrifice to appease God. Killing a goat, the scapegoat for your sins, things like that.
Yeah.
And Joseph Smith is supposedly supposed to restore this in the last days, right? Animal sacrifice. I mean, the sons of Levi, the Aaronic priesthood is supposed to be on earth until the sons of Levi offer an offering in righteousness.
Mm. Do you think, what would the church's position be on that? Would they see it as, oh well, he didn't restore the law of Moses, but because that was sort of ended with Christ and his crucifixion and resurrection, but maybe some of the old biblical practices. I think that would probably be the church's take on that. Would it be?
Yeah, the animal sacrifice came before the law of Moses.
I suppose that's right, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Abraham,
Abraham, yeah,
they offered animal sacrifice before the temple,
that's a good point.
which creates a problem, even in Judaism, of what kind of authority, what kind of priesthood, assuming you have to have priesthood to offer animal sacrifice, which isn't a big assumption, but Jews make that assumption. So they wrestle with what kind of authority did Abraham have to offer sacrifice? The patriarchs. Well, Joseph Smith's answer is the patriarchal priesthood,
Yeah.
which is different than the Melchizedek priesthood, actually, which the patriarchal priesthood is restored by Joseph Smith in 1834, and that's a whole nother story.
That's a whole nother, but okay.
And it ties in with the Book of Abraham. Yeah,
Yes. We'll have to bring you back and do a video on all that. Right, so
such a
let's
complicated, long story,
oh my goodness,
and
yeah.
this is just the beginning. I mean,
This is just dipping your toe in the water. Right, so maybe talk to us about so we started talking about Josiah Stowel, how he sort of hears about Joseph Smith. Doesn't he go to visit Joseph on his property and
yeah, he
is
went
sort of
to.
convinced that Joseph Smith has
Well,
uh
how he got convinced is very interesting too. Is um, Joseph Smith gives him a reading, a remote reading, actually, kind of a remote viewing.
does he describe his property?
Yeah, he describes his property. So, uh, you know how we have remote viewers, claims of remote viewing today, people that can see distances and draw things and it's supposed to match. Well, they had them back then too. And Joseph Smith was of a sort. It was a remote viewer, and he looked into stone and he told Josiah Stowel, and this is according to Josiah Stowel in the 1826 trial record in
Yes.
South Bainbridge. And Josiah Stowel gets on the stand and says, he believes Joseph Smith has this gift, and he's had plenty of proof, even though he's never recovered anything. So when he went to see Joseph Smith came to his son's house and could see a hand on a tree, could describe his house and outhouses, and that there was a hand on a tree. And I interpret that as, well, what could that mean? That's one of those vague things that psychics often do. That I see on your property a tree with a hand laid on it. Well, is it a hand that, like it was chopped down, a very prominent tree, and there's supposed to be a treasure near this tree, or is there somebody stuck their hand in a hand in white paint, whitewash, and put it on a tree? It's up to you to interpret that. And Josiah still did, and he was convinced by that demonstration that Joseph could see. Now, how could he know that? How could he describe it in such a way as to convince Josiah Stowel that he had a gift of seeing? Well, how do psychics today do cold readings and convince people that they know their relative, their dead relative, or they know things that have happened in their past? Well, the cold reader gives vague descriptions or statements and allows the person to interpret it. Now, if the person won't participate and give feedback, it usually, stops. It can't continue. But there's a
Right.
back and forth. There's a back and forth in a cold reading. But, oh, that could be, and so the person actually helps. Also, there's a thing called hot reading. And hot reading is where the person actually knows information and is exploiting that information. Okay, so just what if Simpson Stoll wrote his father about Joseph Smith, he must know Joseph Smith. And it's conceivable that Simpson talked about where he came from.
Okay. So you think it's possible he may have got it from
The
him?
first thing, oh, you're not from here. Where are you from? How long have you been here? Where'd you come? That kind of a thing. And then all of a sudden, here comes his father, right? And he gives a reading. And There you are. He's exploiting the information, maybe being intuitive about some of it, but all we get is Josiah Stowell's testimony of his interpretation of what had happened. And we know from studying psychics today what could happen, and how in a reading, the person that received it turns some of the vague statements into positive statements and forgets the things that aren't right. Forgets the misses, remembers the hits, and even changes in participating. Like Joe Smith says, oh, and it's vague. It's where he says to Emma, does Jerusalem have a wall? I thought I was deceived. It's not as black and white all the time.
So you would interpret that Joseph Smith was using similar techniques to what sort of a psychic might use with I'm not gonna say his victim, but with other people.
His mark.
As opposed to maybe a believer might believe that he maybe genuinely did have this gift to see, he could see these things. However, I think apologists have acknowledged that they would hold the view that he did have this genuine gift to see, to find lost objects, but he didn't find any treasure. I think they've acknowledged that there's no accounts of treasure being found. So perhaps the gift didn't work when it came to finding buried treasure. So why don't we talk a little bit about what he was doing for Josiah?
My friend Mike Quinn would have said he accepted the whole magic world view, that it was real.
Right.
And as an apologist, that would be one way to be consistent.
Intellectually consistent, yeah.
Yeah, like, well, if you believe these miracles can happen over here, you can believe this. If you believe that Urim and Thummim could work, why can't you believe the brownstone worked?
Yeah, sure. It's all supernatural, isn't it? It's all
right. So my
belief.
friend Mike Quinn would say, why not guardian treasure spirits? Why can't God work through those things too?
Mm-hmm.
And that was his approach.
That was his interpretation, even though you would have
why can't
the sources.
White magic be real?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. So he goes, him and his father, they go to work for Josiah Stowel. They board with Isaac Hale, and that's how Joseph meets Emma. Is this at the end of 1826 or the end of 1825? What year is this?
Okay, November 1825 is when Josiah Stowel and his company, there's other diggers, the actual diggers, came down the Susquehanna River. See, it's all connected. The Susquehanna River, there's this big part down in northern Pennsylvania called the Great Bend. And it comes from, Atlantic Ocean, and it crosses Pennsylvania. And then there's a great bend in the river that goes north. Okay. And directly north on the Susquehanna River comes Colesville. There's Windsor first. There's Windsor Township, where this guy named Oliver Harper lived. That was one of the first diggers of this treasure. Then Colesville, where Joseph Knight Sr. lives. And this is all along the Susquehanna River. You keep going up the Susquehanna River, and boom, you hit South Bainbridge, where Josiah Stowell lived. And they knew each other, Stowell and Joseph Knight Sr.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And so how long does
the Great Bend? And in the Great Bend is this big hill. And when Joe Smith finally moves there and he's living in this house, he can look out from his porch and see the actual holes that were dug, that he directed to dig up on that side of that hill. That's that close.
Right. I know Joseph Smith.
If you go there now, it's all wooded now. I went up there, I could not find any holes, but And neither the person that owned that land didn't know of any holes either. They had all been buried in, covered in. But around the turn of the 20th century, Edward Anderson went up there and took pictures, and has a picture of a man standing in one of the smaller holes. There's a man standing with his head sticking out, and written on that photo, it's in the LDS Church archives, Mormon money hole.
Right.
So they were still there at the turn of the century, the smaller holes. There was once a huge giant hole that was covered in because of the cows kept falling in it. But
so not small holes that are being dug. These are big.
This was huge, 130 feet in diameter, and even had like a drainage ditch dug off of it. So because it's on a slope of a hill, and they just dug a ditch and just drained. But so Joe Smith took him to this. They boarded with Isaac Hale. This is where Joe Smith met Isaac Hale's daughter, and was becoming romantic with her. And Isaac Hale at first believed in this whole thing.
He was a treasure digger as well.
Well, all I know is he believed that it could be done. Seers were real, and it was a legitimate operation, but came to disbelieve it after Joe Smith would say they were there about a month. The treasure was enchanted and slipped down the side of the hill to another location. And they started digging a smaller hole, and then he would say, no, it just slid again, and it's over here. So they dug a series of about 5 holes on the hill.
How long was he working for Stowel? Did you say a month?
A month in this location.
That's a lot of digging, isn't it? And would they have been working every day?
They had several people digging, several men. No problem digging a hole in one day. And they dug up, they actually wrote a money digging contract among that if they found anything, it would be divided by shares. There was 11 people evidently, and the Smiths would get 2/11ths. 2 of the 11ths.
And Joseph Smith, he was kind of leading this. He was the one looking through the stone in the hat, claiming to see, the treasure, because he talks about it in his own history that, he says he worked for Josiah Stowel, that he was a treasure digger, but he sort of like omits or leaves out that he was the one sort of like leading the expedition, that he could see through a stone.
In his history, he kind of left that out. So the history was actually written in order to, owing to the false reports, that have been abroad. And what he's alluding to, and this is 1838, he's alluding to Hurlbut's affidavits, and even Isaac Hale, his own relatives' affidavits, the Lewises, which were the Lewis family.
Were they cousins of the Hales?
Cousins of Emma, yeah. These affidavits were collected not by Hurlbut, but by E.D. Howe through the mail. The ones from Harmony. The Hurlbut, I think, got one, but it had been lost. And so E.D. Howe wrote back to Isaac Hale, who made another affidavit for E.D. Howe. And so Joseph Smith is contradicting these money digging tales, but isn't forthcoming in his history about them. He makes it sound like it was a one-time event with Josiah Stowel. Josiah Stowel came all the way. He doesn't say anything about Josiah Stowel's son or anything, but he came all the way to Manchester to hire Joseph Smith for whatever reason. His history doesn't give you any clue as to why Josiah Stowel hired Joseph Smith.
But he leaves out the backstory.
Yeah, he makes it sound like he's just a money digger. I'm just digging for money. And then finally he pressed upon Josiah Stowel to give up the operation. Well, well, why would Josiah Stowel why would Joseph Smith want to put himself out of business digging? I mean, if you're a money digger, you'd dig forever for whoever wanted to hire you to dig. I mean,
Mm,
why would he listen to Joseph Smith about quitting digging? You know, what does Joseph Smith have to do with it? So
mm,
there's a lot of the story that's just totally missing, you know, that it just sits there and sounds like he's contradicting and saying, oh, there's nothing to it, you know. And just before he starts dictating the history of the church, he answers questions in the elders' journal, which is so there. By the time he starts dictating this history, he's in Missouri, far west Missouri, and they're publishing a journal called the Elders' Journal. And in the Elders' Journal, Joseph Smith answers questions that he had been pestered with on his various journeys. One of them, you know, did you steal Emma? You know, and he says, oh, well, ask Emma. Do the Mormons believe the Bible? Oh, well, if we do, we're the only ones. You know,
mm,
so he's giving these kind of sarcastic answers. Well, um, one of them is, it was Joseph Smith the money digger? Yes, but it wasn't very profitable. He only made um, was it $12 a month? I think it was. Well, which is more than what the ditch diggers of the Erie Canal made, you know. But um, so it wasn't very profitable, yeah, you know. And he makes it sound like, oh, I'm just digging. These are all lies. These are all false stories out there, you know.
mm.
Which so I always tell people that Joseph Smith is the first apologist, you know. Um, Mormonism is founded on apologetics because they're going to argue with all the Protestants that they're wrong and they're the only right ones, and they're going to use the Bible, and they're going to be uh, arguing with people and you know, saying we're the real Christians and everybody else isn't. Well, uh, so apologetics is built in to Mormonism, and there's no escaping it. Some people try to, oh, the apologist, just ignore them, kind of a thing. But I don't ignore them. They have a voice. I include all
Yeah,
voices. I
yeah.
include all voices. If you are trying to find the truth, you're going to listen to everybody. You know,
And
everybody, and apologists have something to say that's valuable. I don't just write them all off. You know, they correct me sometimes.
and
You
I
know,
admire that because part of the purpose of my channel is try to be fair and objective.
yeah,
To look at,
yeah,
look at the history, look at the evidence, look at the sources. Ultimately, I think all of us are trying to seek truth as best as we can. And I think to be fair and objective, you need to look at both sides, look at both arguments, and then people can make their informed decision, come to their own conclusions. But I don't think
mhm,
you should be fearful about looking at both sides. That's sort of like a healthy debate when it comes to any
yeah.
matter, and then you can
Well, there's
make,
some critics there's some critics that are on the opposite end that get everything wrong too.
yeah,
You know, that just you know, they're too happy to make it the worst possible scenario.
yeah. Put Joseph Smith in as bad a
Worst,
light as possible.
yeah, yeah. They're too eager,
Yeah.
and
You
so
need to be intellectually honest
I
and
have to
fair.
correct that too. You
Hmm.
know, it's not my job to correct people. I don't want it to sound that way, like I'm the guy correcting everybody. But I have to disagree with them. Put it that way. I have to
Yeah.
disagree with their take on Joseph Smith,
Which
and
probably
say,
makes you stand out with your pious fraud theory,
yeah,
because although you would be, you're kind of a critic and you have your own biases in this in the sense that you don't believe in the supernatural, so you would
I'm a
find,
naturalist.
yeah,
I believe everything. Uh, you don't have to go outside of nature to explain whatever happens within nature.
ah, so there's a
That's a
natural
philosophical
explanation.
problem by itself. Is
Hmm.
how can you use anything that happens in nature, even if it's a miracle? Why? How can you go outside of nature to explain whatever happened in there? What relevance could it possibly be? And how can you have access to it? And if you have access to it, isn't that part of nature too?
Mm.
So there's a whole problem with,
Yeah.
but I'm a naturalist. Okay. I don't say that the supernatural doesn't happen. I just question the evidence upon which that is based.
Right. Yeah. The validity of some of those people's accounts, of visions and healings and all sorts of things. No,
So
that's grand. So going back to Joseph Smith and Josiah Stowel. So they're digging for about a month or so. They're not finding the treasure. Does Isaac Hale then become sort of like disillusioned and skeptical of Joseph Smith?
no,
No.
no, this guy's a true believer.
Even
He's a true,
after
he's a
a
true
time. Not,
believer in the money digging.
okay.
Forget about Mormonism. He never becomes a Mormon,
Yeah.
as far as I know. Maybe, but as far as we know, there's no like baptismal record or anything, or somebody saying I baptized him or something like that. Now, he's a true believer in Joseph Smith's money digging to the end. He never denounces it. Not even his sons. So
This is Isaac Hale.
Isaac, no, I not Isaac Hale.
Josiah
Josiah
Stowel. Sorry, I
Stowell.
meant
Sorry.
Isaac. I meant Isaac Hale.
I
Sorry.
I was talking about. We'd have
Josiah
to
Stowel.
read to see what you really said, but okay. Isaac Hale was a true believer. You're right. He did believe at first, but then came to not believe it
Yeah.
because of all the shenanigans he saw Joseph Smith doing.
Right.
The slipping the treasures and stuff, which is, even though they had a seer like Odell on previous occasion, on a previous occasion they had Odell point out the spot to where the treasure was to dig, which came up with nothing. Not all seers tried to manipulate the supernatural by incantations or formulas or magic circles or things like that, or commune with the spirits. That's something Joseph Smith, I believe, picked up from Walter's the Magician that he liked. And
Okay.
that part of it he actually liked. And that's the part that evolves into religion, I believe, where he carried on that role in a different direction, in a more mainstream way, because it wasn't non-Christian into Christian prophet. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't a non-Christian magician. He was a Christian magician,
Christian. Yeah.
but he developed into a more mainstream prophet, image of a prophet anyway.
Right. Yeah. So in his own history, when he
And
talks
he
about the Book of Mormon
discards the
translation,
stone,
yeah, Urim and Thummim.
and he discards that, and he
Yeah.
just goes it on his own revelation through the Spirit, and he
Yeah.
transforms the story from a treasure garden into an angel, from seer stone or magical spectacles it was, into the Urim and Thummim, to become more mainstream, to be more what mainstream Christians would expect, to be more appealing to those prospective converts, to
Right.
gain more power. And the more power he gained, the more good work he could do for God. That kind of a thing. That's the way I see it, is that he's sincere. If he's presented with, if I don't do this, I'll have less converts. But if I do this, I have more converts and I get more power. The more power I get, the more good I can do for God.
So kind of like the end again, the end justifying the means.
Don't listen to that. Listen.
Yeah. So you're kind of saying he's maybe withholding or certain aspects of his history to
Yeah.
help the cause of growing the church and building people's faith through a more faith promoting narrative, leaving out some of the more strange, maybe magical aspects.
Yeah,
Okay.
because
Okay.
that allowed him. See, in 1831, at a conference, Hiram goes, "No, Joseph, tell us the story of the coming forth of the Book of Mormon."
Yeah, I remember that.
And then he says, "It's not for the world to know all the particulars of the coming forth of the Book of Mormon." Why did he why did he say that? Well, 1831, right then in the newspapers, that in the E.D. Howe in the Painesville Telegraph is publishing these money digging stories of Joseph Smith and the affidavits that an affidavit signed by various residents of Palmyra about Joseph Smith's money digging is published in the newspapers at that very time. In the room is sitting Hiram Smith, Joseph Smith Sr. Is he going to change the story with these guys sitting there? No.
Who knew it was by the Seer stone?
They knew the magic part.
Yeah.
They weren't embarrassed by it, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't help Joseph Smith convert more people. It might have caused more problems. And the
Uh,
fact that E.D. Howe's publishing it in the papers, it is an embarrassing element, even though they may have still believe it, right?
yeah.
But they don't want to give it any validity. And he can't change the story or downplay the parts, certain parts of it. Hiram's not embarrassed by it. He's bringing it up. Well, Joseph Smith doesn't want to. He knows that it's not going to improve his position any.
Hmm. I suppose maybe a believer might think, oh, well, maybe he's just withholding because he thinks it's sacred or the world isn't quite
No, he
ready to
goes
hear
and tells it in elaborate detail very soon after that.
later on. Right.
1834, and right after E.D. Howe publishes this big book about all these magic things and all that, Joseph Smith starts publishing a history with Oliver Cowdery in the Messenger and Advocate. September 1834, Oliver Cowdery is writing a letter to W.W. Phelps in Missouri, and tells the story of an unnamed angel ordaining Joseph and Oliver to this authority to baptize.
Did you say it was 1834?
1834, September 1834 is the date
Okay.
of the letter. It
Uh-huh.
it gets published in October, in the October issue of the Messenger and Advocate, published in Kirtland, Ohio. And it starts a correspondence between Oliver and W.W. Phelps in Missouri, who is publishing the Evening and Morning Star in Missouri.
Mhm.
So, but it doesn't. These letters don't get published in there for some reason. So Oliver Cowdery writes W.W. Phelps and tells him about the ordination. And telling him about the ordination was important because the Missouri church is threatening to break off. Okay.
Yeah.
And they're having problems with Joseph Smith as president of the high priesthood, that kind of stuff. And they think Joseph Smith is just usurping authority himself over Bishop Partridge, who's the head of the Missouri church.
Because there's
So,
the Kirtland Church and the Missouri Church at that time.
Yeah. So the headquarters was in Kirtland with Joseph Smith, but he wasn't clearly the president of the church. He might have been president of the high priesthood, right? But Bishop Partridge over in Missouri, or down in Missouri, believes that he's the leader of that church. Not that it's a separate church or anything, but it's his stewardship to run it as he feels inspired to run it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and they feel Joseph Smith is usurping authority, and they're not so sure that Joseph Smith is really the president of the high priesthood, and that knocks Bishop Partridge out of the leadership position there in Missouri. And the same thing keeps happening even when David Whitmer becomes president of the High Council in Missouri, he sees himself as the president of the church in Missouri.
Gotcha.
And then the president of the high priesthood slowly evolves into a president of the whole church, and finally the presidency of Missouri gets excommunicated over various issues to remove them out of the competition with Joseph Smith altogether. So
Is this Edward Partridge?
No, the David Whitmer.
Okay.
David Whitmer was the head of, Edward Partridge was a bishop.
Yeah.
And then there was another bishop appointed in Kirtland to take his place when he went to Missouri. But Edward Partridge saw himself as the bishop, the leader of the church in Missouri, until the High Council. And then the High Council had a president of the High Council and two counselors, John Whitmer and W.W. Phelps. I think that's how it went. And they get knocked out. The first presidency, the presidency of the Missouri church finally get excommunicated in 1838. And that's when Joseph Smith moves there permanently.
Okay.
And becomes president of the whole church. He starts writing in his letters.
I see.
So yeah, there's a whole development of the priesthood that goes along. It doesn't all happen at once, and as challenges crop up, that kind of in a way forces various developments to take place.
Interesting.
So that's a whole nother story.
I don't actually know fully how we got here from Josiah Stowel. That's really interesting. Yeah. So if we go back to Josiah Stowel, so is it his nephew that complains eventually after a certain period? Is it months that he feels like his uncle is being maybe pretty much conned or scammed by Joseph Smith, that he's just pretending to see in a stone and he's taking court?
After Harmony, and they break up there, Joseph Smith goes to South Bainbridge with Josiah Stowel and lives with Josiah Stowel through the winter.
Okay.
And goes to school with Josiah Stowel's sons. Meanwhile, from November to March, November 1825 to March 20th, 1826, Joseph Smith continues to be hired out, and Josiah Stowel hires him to dig other treasures along the Susquehanna. When Josiah Stowell's on the witness stand or whatever it was, it probably wasn't formal, but when he was testifying under oath, Josiah Stowell makes it very clear that he believes in Joseph Smith's gifts for various reasons. But he names several locations where Joseph Smith dug. One was on Bend Mountain. Bend Mountain was the Spanish mine. Then he names places, names people's property, and situations where they dug, once for salt, another time for some money, lost money, and an Indian treasure. This Jonathan Thompson, also a believer, Jonathan Thompson testifies in the 1826 trial on Joseph Smith's behalf, that Joseph Smith dug for an Indian. Two Indians fought over this treasure, and when they buried it, and one of them killed the other and buried it, the body with the trunk, and it was and they dug for it and it slipped away. So these would be interpreted by Albert Neely, the justice who tried the case, as the more or less evidence against Joseph Smith, because the law did not distinguish between true seers and fake seers. Just pretending to see treasures under the ground or reading palms or all these schemes. Usually it's when money is traded hands, when it becomes that's when it becomes a problem with the law.
Because he was
Now,
getting paid for it.
yeah, being paid for it.
Doesn't Joseph Smith claim that he never solicited it? He wanted to
That's
sort of move away from this sort of business. It's hurt his eyes.
exactly. Joseph Smith testifies not under oath because this was like a preliminary hearing.
So
So
it was a hearing, not like a
yeah, it's not a
trial.
trial.
Okay.
The justice is looking for evidence enough to proceed on with a trial, which appears to have happened. That they found Neely did find evidence, because when you read the records, he refers to he subpoenas witnesses, 7 witnesses, but he also notifies 2 other justices. So when you move to a real trial, it has to be a 3-justice trial in the law in South Bainbridge County or Chenango County at that time. So,
Okay.
so in the records, he's notifying 2 other justices. Why? If he was found innocent, no.
And isn't
How
there
could he
a
be found
statement?
innocent when he did break the law? He did break the law. Did not distinguish, and it was under the disorderly persons statute. Okay,
Yes.
as a sub part, and it's not on the records anymore. I don't know exactly when it was taken off, but it was a sub part of people who pretended to see underground. Pretend. Now, when you read in the 1826 trial record that we don't have the original of, but it was published later in Utah by his niece.
Whose niece?
Albert Neely's niece.
Okay.
Albert Neely's dead. So when you read the text, it says pretend. The witness pretended, or the defendant pretended.
And that's what's considered
Prisoner.
illegal.
They use the term prisoner
Uh-huh.
because he was just a prisoner at the time. The prisoner pretended to da 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 da. Even in Josiah Stowell's testimony, pretended, and Josiah Stowell believes. Well, Neely is putting that pretend in there because that's the wording in the law. So so Joe Smith did break the law, okay, and he had every right to find him guilty. Well, why wasn't there a trial? And that's where there's nothing in the record to tell us why. There's later reminiscences that tell us why. There's Joel King Noble, Joel
So many names.
Joel King Noble, who was the justice in Colesville that tried him in Colesville in 1830. And that was a retrial of the old trial. So he knew the particulars of the old trial.
So retrial, okay, in 1830.
So it got brought up again when he started testifying about the Book of Mormon.
I see.
They go, aha. So this is probably what happened. Now, in the list of charges, it says that the constable charged, this is the constable's bill to the county, is he wanted money for notifying the justices, for subpoenaing the witnesses, for carrying the prisoner 10 miles. 10 miles? Where? He didn't have to take him anywhere. They're there. Well, one of the penalties for this crime is being banished from the county for 6 months. Or
Instead of imprisonment or getting a
going
fine.
to prison, instead of going to the jail house, or yeah, instead of going to the jailhouse, where you're banished from the county for 6 months. That's all the authority the guy had. So what I surmise from the records is that he was he was found guilty.
Yeah, isn't there a statement on the transcript that said, like, thus we find the
Yeah,
defendant guilty?
yeah, it changes it to prisoner though.
Ah, right.
Because now that we have enough evidence to charge you formally, you're now the prisoner. Okay. You're not the prisoner, you're now the defendant. Yeah, you're now the defendant. So it says some apologists have tried to say, well, that was added. Okay, that was like inserted because we don't have the original, we can't tell. But changing it to defendant, that means they probably inserted that in Utah before they published it. So, which I don't believe is true, but so what I think happened was that they made an off the record deal since Joe Smith is a youth. He's like 19 years old.
Yeah, he's young.
Yeah. And he hasn't had any trouble. He said he was on the witness stand and said he wanted to give it up anyway because it was hurting his eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And on the witness stand, he said he had been doing it for 3 years.
So did back to 1823.
1822.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, 1823-ish. 1822 is when he found this stone.
Yeah.
When he borrowed it, could have been 1823, right? So, they let him go. They let him go, but they probably said, if you agree not to come back for 6 months, because he does come back to get married, remember?
To elope with Emma.
Well, he eloped with Emma down in Harmony. He came up to Josiah Stowell's house. He stayed with Josiah Stowell and he got married in South Bainbridge.
Oh.
By Justice, I can't pull out of my memory right now, but right in the same place. He got married there, but that was after 6 months had elapsed.
So you would say that he served his time not returning within
and he
6
could go
months.
back, and he would have, if he had escaped, like one person assumed that he had taken leg bail, which is escaped. Leg bail is escape custody. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't have come back to that town, right?
Yeah. No, definitely not.
So that's why I surmised that an off the record deal. And Wesley Walters, who discovered the bills, actually, that's what he surmised also, that some kind of off the record deal had been made to allow him to go. And I think that's a William D. Purple, 1877. He gave a reminiscence. He lived in nearby Green, Chenango County, but he said that he was the guy keeping notes of the trial. So he kind of is in on the inside. So I think he's the one that says he was designedly allowed to escape, or I think he's the one that used that terminology. There's him, and then there's Abraham W. Benton in 1831. So early. Benton was involved with the 1830 trial, but he's the one that mentioned the previous trial also. So it was real. So Mormon apologists for the longest time had denied that the trial even took place. It was all pure fiction, that the publication of the trial record in Utah was fake.
Didn't Hugh Nibley say, like, if it's authentic, it's like the most damning evidence against Joseph Smith?
That's a famous statement he should not have made.
Yeah.
Because really, it doesn't prove that at all.
Yeah,
it's not the most damning evidence. It doesn't prove Joseph Smith's a false prophet, even if he was guilty.
Yeah.
So, there's even the real conservative apologists that will try to argue that the publication of the trial record in Utah's was fake, but it was published independently three different times from whatever was used, three different times, provided by the niece of Albert Neely, who went on a mission to Utah as a Christian missionary, and had brought that with her out of his docket book, either a copy or they tore it out or had the docket book itself or something, but no one could ever find the docket book, and possibly the person that last had it probably lost it due to a fire. It was a religious person, may have lost it due to a fire that destroyed their church records and things. But
you believe the second draft, it's you would say a reliable,
there were
trustworthy transcript?
three independent publications, and the publication had itemized charges on the bottom, these itemized charges that when Wesley Walters in the 1970s, or something like that, found the trial records in the Bainbridge County jailhouse in the basement, soaking wet, because it was there. It was up. The records were in boxes up against the wall that was leaking, and they were damaged. They're still damaged. They're slightly damaged. Some parts are very water stained, and some of it's lost even. But it had the same costs that the justice charged the county at the bottom of the published record in the 1870s and 80s. It was published, had these itemized charges that Neely gave the county were on the bills found in the basement. So that was one thing. Some people try to say, oh, well, Wesley Walters planted it, he's a forger or some kind. No, there's no evidence of that whatsoever. And it's only the most hardened or free-going, let's say, apologists that try to deny it. But if somebody forged the transcript of the trial record that has the actual testimony, would they make Josiah Stowel a believer giving evidence, or Jonathan Thompson saying he knows Joseph Smith could do it because they dug down? Okay, one of the stories was they dug down. Joseph Smith looked in his stone and saw a treasure, and there was when it was buried, a tail feather was placed on the lid of a bird.
Mm-hmm.
They buried the trunk. They dug down and they found the feather, but not the trunk.
Yeah, I remember that
yeah,
part.
okay. So I take from that what are the how it's impossible virtually to find a tail feather, even if it were there, but to find a tail feather, and then that was buried there for how many years under the ground, and not find the treasure, that it really slipped away. Now, my friend Mike Quinn would say treasures could slip away.
Yeah, hear you just say they can't.
He believes treasures can slip away. I'm too much of a naturalist to believe that. So
I can't say that I would believe in slippery treasures either, so I'm with you there.
So, well, the Book of Mormon alludes to slippery treasures.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Slippery tools, slippery treasures, that the Nephites buried their treasures because of the robbers, but they could never recover them again because they had become wicked, and God had caused their,
like a curse,
slip away. Yeah, the land was cursed and they slipped away. So I would see that as a reflection of Joseph Smith's environment.
Making it way into the Book of Mormon text.
But actual slippery treasures in Joseph Smith's world, my friend Mike Quinn would believe, to be consistent, he would argue that could happen. Just as good true as anything else, any
Mm.
other supernatural event. So but I take that as one of the sure evidences that Joseph Smith, on occasion, used deception to bolster faith, which it worked. Josiah Stowel went and testified. He believes it. This happened. He has other evidence that they dug and they found um, a specimen of gold, but not the gold.
So you believe Joseph Smith probably planted the feather
Sometimes,
then?
or they found fool's gold, maybe, I don't know.
Uh,
Some sort of thing happened to make them believe, or they would dig down and they think they heard the top of the trunk. You know, they dug, or they broke a corner off, according to Martin Harris, and they got the corner of the stone box still. It was just that's all there was. That thing, it was oddly shaped, maybe could have been a lid of something, because they did believe the Indians buried. Joe Smith wasn't the only one who believed that the Indians would bury things in stone boxes. Because there's a lot of stories that I put in my Indian origin book, the Book of Mormon and Indian Origins,
mm-hmm.
that they found similar stone boxes with skeletons in them in Indian mounds. So
Right.
they could have found a box like that, but it wouldn't be like a perfect sarcophagus or anything, or man-made. It would still look rough. And if you found a stone that looked like a corner of something, and you could make that into a story of a stone box where you broke a corner off and the rest sunk,
Right. Okay.
disappeared. So if you're digging enough, and the folklore and all sorts of people doing things, you're going to get stories like this that survive, that get embellished,
As they get passed down.
that survive the other stories.
Gotcha.
And, yeah. So
Okay. So I guess next in the timeline, so he goes away for 6 months. Does Joseph Smith stop then sort of treasure digging after the 1826 court hearing? Does he kind of move away
okay,
from that?
like I mentioned, the part where he was involved in a money digging operation on the William Stafford's property. Afterwards,
Oh, okay.
I don't think he had a firm line, but
A complete stop.
the thing about William D. Purple, 1877 reminiscence of the 1826 trial, where he said he was the scribe for the trial, kept notes for Judge Neely. He gave an account of Joseph Smith Sr.'s testimony. And this is supposedly based on notes he still had, but you don't know how full those notes were. But he tells about Joseph Smith Sr.'s testimony that is not in the trial record itself. The justice doesn't have to record every testimony, only the main testimony, usually the against the testimony that gives you evidence in which to prove probable cause, right? So they don't record all the testimony. There was like 7 witnesses, 7 subpoenas, so we don't have testimony of 7 people. But so Albert Neely didn't record in his transcript Joseph Smith Sr.'s, but William D. Purple remembered it, or had notes of it, or probably filled it out. But he said that Joseph Smith Sr. believed in his son's gift, and that he hoped, it was his hope, that his son would use his God-given gift for other than filthy lucre, other than making money.
So he probably believed he was misusing a real spiritual gift from God in seeking for treasure.
So Joseph Smith comes back, and it's the brownstone he was using.
Yeah, was the brownstone he used in all of his treasure digging, or most of it? That was the stone.
He used a white one sometimes.
Okay.
According to 2 or okay, at least one of these witnesses at this time said that Joseph Smith had a white stone, and that he took the stone and he laid a book upon a handkerchief and turned his back, and with his stone held up the stone up to a light, a candle or whatever, and could read the book with his back turned to it. But this witness said, without giving details, the fraud was so palpable that he couldn't believe in it.
That was one
So
of the witnesses in
that was
in the
in the
hearing.
1826 trial.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
Yeah. So he didn't tell why he thought it was a fraud or anything. I could think of ways, because in my magic years, my mind just automatically does that stuff. And you know what I mean? So when I watch magicians, I'm I'm
How
the
did they
guy
do it?
trying to figure it out guy. And
Yeah.
anyway, so uh
So is this really when Joseph then moves away from treasure digging
right,
towards
that's where I was going.
translation and the gold plates? Because this will be going in
Yeah.
1827 then.
So this is March 1826. So
Yeah.
they go home. They
Okay.
go they go home. Um, um, Joseph, part of my story about the revival was, and Joseph Smith was engaged in it, and was very inclined to joining the Methodist Church. This is the part I believe he's talking about, um, the revival in which his mother and three of his siblings were proselyted to the Presbyterian Church, right?
Yeah,
That was
because
in
that's in his
2425. Yeah,
1838 account that he claims was his 1820 vision,
yeah.
but we know that she didn't join the Presbyterian Church until what date was it? 1824,
We
was it?
don't have a date because the
Okay.
books are lost.
Right.
Wesley Walters tried like hell to find him, but couldn't. Even Mike Marquardt, my friend Mike Marquardt, has made several attempts, could not find it. And the Palmyra Presbyterian Church believes that they had been accidentally taken to the dump.
Right. But doesn't Lucy claim in her history that she joined or at least was going to the Presbyterian Church after Alvin's death, like seeking
Yeah.
comfort
Well,
and solace?
in her history, she was so distraught about Alvin's death, she couldn't let Joseph Smith talk about the record, the gold plates anymore, because it would bring Alvin up to their minds. Because Alvin would get the family together and they would sit around, and Joseph Smith would talk about the Nephites, the record, as if he lived among them, describing all the details of their dress and their mannerisms, their religion, the whole thing. So the family would get around, and Alvin was really the most excited about it, it seemed. And after Alvin's death, Lucy says she couldn't bear hearing any more of these stories. And so she went to the Presbyterian Church to find solace over the death. It happens that the Presbyterian minister, she was already like herself inclined to Presbyterianism. I mean, she had attended Methodist revivals back in Vermont, but in New Hampshire probably, but she was more inclined to more puritanical conservative religion. And so she attended the Presbyterian Church on occasion, but she really got earnest after Alvin's death. And then the revival happens, and everybody's excited about it. And the revival reminds people that you need to be baptized and be a member of a church, or else you're going to hell or something.
Right.
So she joined after Alvin's death, because that's exactly what the minister implied at Alvin's funeral. So she had the Presbyterian minister, it was Benjamin Stockdard.
And I read that Drew Smith Sr. wasn't happy with that quote because who's
Yeah.
a Universalist.
Yeah. According to William Smith, he was very unhappy because the thing is that they didn't, both Lucy and Joseph Smith Sr. were unchurched themselves. Lucy had gotten baptized, but she insisted when she was baptized that she belonged to no certain denomination. So the minister performed it anyway. And so they, and Joseph Smith Sr.'s visions, dream visions, 1819-ish, around that time, his vision said that there were no true churches, that the whole religious world were corrupt and dead spiritually, and so he wouldn't join. Even back in Vermont, Asel Smith and even Jesse Smith, who later was a staunch Calvinist, uh, they all joined the Universalist Church and refused to pay pew tax. They were paying in the local congregational church, and they announced that they were unchurched, they were nonconformists, and they were also Universalists, and they refused to pay pew tax. So Joseph Smith Sr. is strongly inclined, like Asel Smith. Asel Smith was very seriously Universalist, and Joseph Smith Sr. appears to also be Universalist, and probably also Unitarian, which believes that Jesus is not God, and that he's the Son of God, but not in the same way sense as anybody else, but not God. There's only one God. So he's Unitarian. Okay. Most Universalists are Unitarians, although there were some Universalists that were believed in Christ's atonement. But I believe that Joseph Smith Sr. probably was not. And that was Joseph Smith's reason for being very strongly Christ is the Messiah, Christ is God,
Yeah.
the atonement and all that. And I believe he was converted to Jesus in 1820 or 21 in his first, whatever it was, first vision, first born again, his born again experience. He was born again to Jesus. He still retained belief in universalism, as we later learned. But he converted to Jesus at a young age and tried to convert his father, but probably was very unsuccessful in doing that. But so Joseph Smith Sr.'s visions were universalist, because he has, according to Lucy's later account, he has a tree of life kind of vision. And that vision had all the family coming, everybody coming to the tree of life together and enjoying, the whole family. Unlike Lehi's family, only some of
With
them made
Lehman and
it.
Lemuel in
Yeah, Laman
particular
and
for
Lemuel did not make it to the tree.
yeah.
So that my interpretation is Joseph Smith corrects his father's vision and into including hell. Hell is the filthy water. The stream is filthy. Lehi didn't notice that, and Nephi notices it and puts it in his vision, his account of the tree of life vision. So I see it developing from Joseph Smith Sr. to Lehi to Nephi. So, and anyway, so see how it all blends together. It's hard to keep it all apart to me.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
back to so that's actually a really good point,
Synthesized.
because
It's all synthesized.
yeah. So going back to
Um,
then to 1826, is there anything important that happens between the hearing and when he elopes with Emma?
so with the stone, during the revival, the reason why I went back to the revival was that Joseph Smith returned the stone to Willard Chase. He returned it. Then, after the revival, after this 1826 return from Harmony, Pennsylvania, he requests Hiram to go get the stone at some point. I don't know exactly when. He requests the stone, Hiram to go get the stone from Willard Chase, which he does. He loans it again, and Hiram takes it and gives it to Joseph, and Joseph uses it. Then Chase requests it back, and Joseph won't return it. He says it was never yours, more or less. It was always his stone because he can see in it. And Willard Chase says that Hiram, being a good Presbyterian, should have kept his word, and that Hiram went back on his word and wouldn't return the stone to him when he requested the stone.
It reminds me of Harry Potter when the guy that has the wand shop says how the wand chooses the wizard, or like the stone chooses the seer.
Yeah, yeah. So, so getting the stone back was part of finding the plates.
Ah, okay.
He needed the stone to find the plates, and that's what happens. He finds the plates. He uses the stone to find the plates. Exactly.
And was it the 22nd of September,
And to
1827?
translate the plates.
Yep, that
Yeah,
stone's very
well,
important.
he has an important work to do with the stone. That's why God gave it to him. It's his stone, not
Yeah.
Willard Chase's stone. So that's why I believe he went to get it back in order to have credibility with the money diggers. The people of this community believed that the stone worked with Joseph could make the stone work. He had credibility with the money diggers. The money diggers now, according to Lorenzo Saunders, when Joseph Smith goes up on the hill in 1827 and supposedly removes the plates from the hill.
Is Emma with him when he goes
Yes.
that year? But is she like in a car? She doesn't actually go with him
Oh
to
yeah.
get the
So
plates, but
both after Joseph Smith and Emma get married in South Bainbridge, and they were staying with Josiah Stowel for a while, Joseph Knight Sr. picks them up in his wagon and transports them to Manchester, and they're living with the Smith family.
okay.
So they're in the frame house still. So what happens is Joseph Knight Sr. and Josiah Stowel are on a business venture to Rochester in Joseph Knight Sr.'s wagon. And they stop by the Smiths, of course, they're on their way back, and stay with the Smiths. And they just happen to come back when, in September, when Joseph Smith's supposed to remove the plates from the hill. And
Perfect timing.
they even go on a money digging venture the night before. And so they're staying there, Joseph Knight Sr. and Josiah Stowel, and Joseph and Emma in the night borrow Joseph Knight Sr.'s wagon without him knowing it and ride that to the hill when Joseph Smith gets the plates. But he leaves Emma in the wagon in the dark at the bottom of the hill, and Joseph Smith climbs the hill and, according to his account, gets the plates.
Yeah. And doesn't he
And
claim as well that he gets chased by some of the other money diggers because they're also
yeah,
trying to, they've heard
that's
tales of the gold plates, and they kind of see it as they want a share of it. And
so yeah, the point too is that the story is so believable. I mean, this is another one of those quotes from Hugh Nibley that he shouldn't have said, which is, "Oh, nobody believed that there would be ancient plates buried in a hill. in America. Oh, they still won't, because there's nothing else like that found in America, especially in North America. A book of plates that big, and no artifact similar to that it's ever been found at any time, even now, in a North American mound. You know, so some people made forgeries, like the Bat Creek stone, a little stone with etchings on it. And but something like the plates, you found in a North American mound. So it is hard. It's even hard to believe. It's hard to believe now, to us, to any archaeologist. Um, so Nibley says, and Joseph Smith finding such an object was unbelievable at the time. Yet since they have found similar type writings on metal plates, around the world. You know what I mean? Like they did know that the Jews did write on plates. Actually, the Apocrypha mentions brass plates, books on brass plates, records on brass plates. And there were claims that the mounds contained copper plates with writing on it, or designs. It was designed, artistically, actually, but that could have been some kind of ancient writing. They found phylacteries written on parchment, which was probably something left from some Jewish colony or Jewish visitor to America in historic times. And they claim they found steel swords, actually, in the mounds that have been rusted away, usually rusted away, and it was a steel sword of some kind. And but it was totally believable to the money diggers, so much so that they tried to steal them from Joseph Smith. They broke into the house trying to get them. Supposedly they broke into Cooper's shop and tore up the floor trying to find them. So these guys, Sally Chase is out looking for them. They even started digging on the hill Cumorah, before Joseph Smith took the plates out, because he had taken a fellow seer, money digger. His name was Samuel Lawrence.
What year was that?
Not sure. It could be 1825, 1826. It doesn't give an exact year, but he's included in the folklore story that Joseph Smith went in 1824 and didn't have Alvin, but the treasure seer said, bring in a substitute, who Joseph Smith says, according to Joseph Knight Sr.'s account. Joseph Knight Sr.'s account says, why can't I get them? Why can't I get the book? Why can't I budge the book? It's like frozen or something. And the messenger says that you can't have them now until you bring the right person. How will I know the right person? Look into your stone. And he looks in the stone and it's Emma. He sees Emma before he even knows Emma. And
is this after Samuel Lawrence?
No, this is before.
Oh, before. Okay.
But in other accounts, he looks into the stone, or he said, you will know the right person. Well, at first, according to Willard Chase, he thought it was this Samuel Lawrence, a fellow seer. Okay. And he took Samuel Lawrence up there on the hill and showed him the place where the plates were. And he told Samuel Lawrence to look into his stone to see if he could see the plates. This is according to Willard Chase, right?
Okay, I remember this account.
Yeah, and so Samuel Lawrence looks into the stone and says, I don't see anything, right? So and then Joseph Smith says, well, look again. And he looks again and he says, oh, I do see the plates, but I see this some spectacles, a large pair of specs sitting on top of the plates, do you see it? And Joseph says no, and he goes, well, look again. And he goes, yeah, okay, I see the spectacles. Well, to me, this is like a kind of a story of two conmen, two seers, trying to play each other in a way where Joseph Smith wants a second witness to the existence of the plates. And I think this is at least 1826. I think this is 1826, after he's decided to revive the plate story. And so Samuel Lawrence doesn't play along without a reward. So he says, so that's why Joseph Smith, he says, no, I don't see anything. And he says, well, look again. And then finally says, okay, I see them, but do you see the spectacles? So that kind of one-ups Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith had not seen the spectacles and
Oh, okay. So he saw something that Joseph Smith didn't see.
didn't see.
Oh,
And
okay.
so he's saying, my power is greater than yours.
So they're almost like competing
So if you
against.
go and tell people, Samuel Lawrence also sees the plates. So I have a second witness to the existence of the plates. And people believe in Samuel Lawrence's gift. And
So adds
Samuel
credibility.
Lawrence says, I saw the spectacles, right, Joseph? And you didn't, right, Joseph? And Joseph says, yeah, you saw the spectacles before me. And so that means that and these were just ordinary spectacles. No one's talking about Urim and Thummim. And certainly there's no idea that you translate the ancient language into these with using these spectacles yet.
Okay.
They're large spectacles because the mound builders are large people, according to the legend. They're
Right.
giant. They're Nephilim.
Oh,
They're
okay.
large people. And that's what, and whenever you hear them talk about skeletons, they're huge, you know. And even now, the Nephilim, the legendary Nephilim, which is a word coming out of Genesis for the giants in Genesis.
Oh, okay.
Nephilim in Genesis, right? The giants were upon the land in Genesis. And they got, I think they're the ones that get destroyed in the flood, but maybe they're after the flood. I can't remember which chapter it is. But anyway, they call the giant mound builders Nephilim.
Very similar to Nephi, isn't it?
Yeah,
Nephilim.
right.
Okay.
So that's a current name. I don't know if that name's back then. I'm not so sure. But
Okay.
um, they were large people. That's why the breastplates are large in the Book of Ether or Mosiah. When they find the breastplates,
Mhm.
are large and sound. Remember that? And Lucy describes the breastplate as being large, and the spectacles are supposed to be large that you can only see through one side at a time. And because the mound builders were large people, especially the Jaredites. And
Right.
so Nephi's large stature, that kind of thing. So
Okay.
um, they're just regular spectacles and to read the book with, and they're large. And Joseph Smith turns them into the translating instrument, and
Hmm.
he's called them spectacles in the 1832 history and
The
other
Urim and
places.
Thummim.
That comes later
Uh-huh.
as an apologetic. It was at first associated with anything in the Old Testament, teraphim and Urim, or Urim and Thummim, and they were just throwing that out, and then it stuck.
Mm-hmm. Guess
You
it
know,
sounds more biblical, doesn't it? Using
yeah,
that term more
yeah.
spiritual, more revelatory.
But of course, it's not the Urim and Thummim. I mean, because that's Moses and Aaron. You know, there's no way that Aaron's Urim and Thummim was the same as what came up through the Jaredites. You know,
Yeah.
right? So the Jaredites are like two stones touched by the finger of God and kept separate. You know,
Oh yes, the
And
brother Jared.
yeah, the
Right.
brother
Yeah. Yeah.
Jared, to translate their record with. Um, so anyway, um, that's how that evolves. But uh, Joe Smith gets the stone back. He gets a second witness from Samuel Lawrence. The the money diggers believe it. It's totally believable to them, especially one of the money diggers, who's Joseph Smith Sr.
Oh,
And
okay.
Joseph Smith Sr. is the money digger too, and he believes in enchanted treasures. So this whole story comes out of that, because that is the one line of authority that Joseph Smith Jr. has with his father, that he's been doing all this time with treasures. So when he does it this time, and this is the one treasure he does get, and this time he proves that he has it, right? They fill it through the cloth when he brings the plates home. Finally, he brings the plates home. They fill it through the cloth. They're not allowed to see it, but he feels it. It's something tangible this time.
Okay. I think you would believe that they were tin plates that Joseph Smith probably
Yeah,
manufactured, as opposed to a believer who believes that they were, you know,
gold
actual
plates.
gold plates that were, deposited by Moroni and that Joseph
Yeah,
Smith
why
obtained them.
can't anybody see it? I mean, not. I mean, Moses didn't say fill these 10 commandments through the cloth. You know, God actually wrote with his finger those 10 commandments, and he's like holding them, not covering them up or anything.
And maybe
They
we could talk about the witnesses. Probably that'll probably be a whole separate interview. But
a whole separate talk. Yeah.
I know like a faithful, a believer, an apologist. With their testimonies, they claim to have seen the plates, held them. They saw the angel. The three witnesses saw the angel and heard the voice of God. The eight witnesses claimed to hold the plates. So I guess they might push back and say, well, some people did claim to actually see them. And I think there's other witnesses who claim to have visions of it as well, outside of the 11 witnesses.
Oh yeah, Joe Smith. He had a large pool of charismatic believers and experiencers. Actually, they're speaking in tongues. They're not going to have any problem seeing visions of plates, but and dreams of plates. And there's all sorts of people. I mean, Mary Musselman Whitmer saw the plates before any of the witnesses saw them.
Right.
She was David and John Whitmer's mother. When Joseph Smith, David went down to Harmony, Pennsylvania, and transported them up to Fayette, New York. Um, and he got there. This is exact. The whole story to that is when David Whitmer got them there, he asked Joseph Smith. He had a premonition that the messenger was under the shed. Somebody mistranscribed that. Well, it was actually
As in
Cook.
the angel or
Yeah,
the
yeah.
spirit?
The messenger,
Oh, okay.
whatever it was at this time. Um, Lyndon Cook transcribed it, and he did it an accident. He misread it as bed, under the bed, which I'm going under the bed. Well, under the shed. And this is where they kept the cows. And um, in order for the messenger to be under the shed, um, that sounds like that salamander story, huh?
Hmm.
But that's all fake. Um, Mark Hoffman got that wrong. He got it wrong.
I don't want to go off another tangent, but isn't there an account? Is it Willard Chase who says
Yes.
when Joseph goes, is it in 1823 that there's something that looks like a toad that
Yeah.
appears when he's trying to obtain and then it turns into an old
It
man, and
morphs into to the spirit of the prophet.
I just thought that was hilarious and
Well,
ridiculous. But that's maybe where the
it's kind of a a changeling in a way. It's a shapeshifter.
Yes.
Yeah,
It can take different forms.
in magic folklore.
Right, right, okay.
Martin Harris sees the devil in the form of a deer. It's not so odd in that culture. Um, no, so he sees something down in the bottom of the hole, according to Willard Chase, that looks something like a toad. It's not a toad, and it's not a salamander. He knows what a salamander is. Um, it's something like a toad. It was a supernatural type creature, something he'd never seen before, and it morphs up into the spirit of the uh, person that buried the treasure.
And sorry, who's this saying that?
Willard Chase.
Oh, Religious. Yeah, that's right.
And he said he got this story from Joseph Smith Sr. in 1827. Well, a relative of the Chases gave a similar story, gave a similar account, which was Lorenzo Saunders and Benjamin Saunders. Benjamin Saunders had married into the Chase family, and he gave a similar account later also that he had heard. So,
right.
but how David Whitmer saying that he has a premonition that the messenger is under the shed. Well, that makes sense if it's something like a toad,
Mm.
you know, and that when Mary Chase goes out in the morning to milk the cows, morphs into the spirit, the messenger.
Okay.
Just like what Chase had said. So, anyway, that's how I reconstruct early Mormon history.
That's interesting. Right. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about now. So he starts he's got the gold plates. He starts translating. Am I right in thinking Martin Harris is his first scribe that he has when he begins translating? Okay.
Long-term scribe, put it that way. So, but to finish the Mary Musselman Whitmer story, the messenger showed her the plates in the shed.
Okay.
You know, while she was milking the cows in the morning, to give her some faith and, you know, strength to do all of her chores. And but I can go into a longer account of what the messenger looked like and why that was all suggestion, the power of suggestion. And but we'll do that at another time.
Yeah.
But if you want to go on to the translation that happens when, so Joseph Smith, he can't do any translating in Manchester where the money diggers are, because they keep trying to get the plates from him. And so
and did he also claim to have the gold plates, the spectacles? Didn't they also claim that you know, like the breastplate, and was it Laban's, the sword of Laban was there as well?
Now, all these things were seen by the witnesses, 3 witnesses, in their vision.
Yes, when they went to the hill.
The formal testimony does not mention anything but the plates and the angel. But the D&C 17 promises that they will see. That's what they will see. They will see it all.
Right.
They will testify to these things. So what was in Joseph Smith's possession? What was in the hill in that box? According to the Martha, I think I said it, Margaret, but it's Martha Corey. See how it pops out correctly when you're not thinking? Martha Corey included in her account, and it's written in, you know, above the line and not directly in, and so you don't know exactly what's going on when that was written in there. But it does mention that Lucy Smith felt these spectacles through a cloth. The night when Joseph Smith came home, he didn't bring the plates, but he let her fill this figure 8 shape with stone, felt like roundish, like stones in the figure 8s,
Mm-hmm.
glasses. Um, and that at another time, he let her fill the breastplate through a large cloth. And but I'm not so sure that actually happened. But if it did, it's not impossible that in my naturalistic explanation that those could be constructed as well. But I wouldn't imagine that he didn't get very much mileage out of these things. But uh, he allowed, I believe it's possible that he allowed Lucy to fill that figure 8 thing because he didn't bring the plates home just to keep her faith going.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think he didn't bring them home because he wasn't finished making them. But because there's no reason why he wouldn't bring them home when he got them. Why would he hide them if he couldn't set them down on the ground? How could he hide them in a log? You know,
So that's the night he obtains the
he
plates. He hides them in a log
hides them in
outside.
a log. Yeah, in a
Right.
hollow log that probably fell and then becomes hollow, and he hid them in the hollow log. And he probably actually hid the plates that he was making in a hollow log. It wasn't made up. It wasn't a made up story. Where else would he hide them? He can't hide them on the hill because there's really no hole. And which was part of the story I was going to tell, which was Lorenzo Saunders and the Money Diggers believed it so much that the day after Joseph Smith said he got the plates from the hill, they went up on the hill and started trying to search for newly dug dirt, a place that was newly dug and stuff. And he had, and the thing is that they most likely, well, they were walking the hill by course, they said, and the only thing on the hill that they found with fresh or dirt that was dug or a hole was the hole that the Money Diggers had dug a year before. So the story of the plates being in the hill and Samuel Lawrence going up and looking at his stone probably triggered the Money Diggers to start digging. Well, Joseph Smith, according to Willard Chase, Joseph Smith said, well, I showed Lawrence the wrong place, which was the western side
Of the
and
hill.
of the hill where the hole was, or the eastern side, excuse me, the eastern side. And the plates were actually on the western side.
Oh, okay.
That's where the monument is, on the western side. So, yeah, he probably showed him the eastern side, just like in the cave. The eastern side of hills had a significance. And he probably showed the eastern side, and they probably dug a very large hole on the eastern side that was still there in 1827 when he went up. And he probably parked on the western side and went to the eastern side where maybe he had stuff, plates, tin stashed, and started constructing them. Probably could build a fire and wouldn't be seen by him on the other side. Probably was asleep anyway. But and then he probably hid them somewhere in a hollow tree when he decided he wasn't going to finish and he couldn't bring them home.
Okay. So that'll be your sort of like interpretation and explanation.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And so my other part of that explanation is that when he went 10 days later, so when Emma went to warn him the plates might be in danger from the Money Diggers, and he looked into his stone. He had a stone in his pocket, and he was digging a well, working. And Emma came to warn him, and he looked in his stone and he says, "No, no, they're perfectly safe." And then he went and got them and brought them home. And when he brought them home, he complained that he had an injured thumb,
Because then
which his
he claimed that
sister,
he got in a fight with some of the
yes,
Money Diggers.
right, 3 ruffians, and he had
I
his
remember that
father.
from the Work in the Glory
Yeah,
series.
yeah. He had his father put it back in place, probably pulling on it or something. I don't know. it was out of place. And this story comes mostly from Catherine Smith, his sister, in several. I mean, it's a story handed down in her family. It's repeated quite often.
Mm.
My account is, well, there's no three ruffians, and he's not running through it with a 60-pound thing or 40 to 60-pound plates and fighting three ruffians and finding a tree to bury the plates, the hollow tree to put the plates in. I believe he's putting the rings on the plates, and that's the final stage of the whole operation. And when he's bending these rings, he injures his thumb. And he
Right.
uses that as a cover story.
Okay.
So that's my reconstruction, my naturalistic reconstruction.
No, that's a fair interpretation of it. I suppose it would be tough to run with carrying plates estimated between 40 to 60
Well,
pounds
40, 60 pounds is the estimate. And if you make a set of plates that size, that's what they weigh out of tin.
in
That's what they
tin. Okay. Okay.
between 40 and 60 pounds, depending on, I don't think he used all uniform, perfectly brand new sheets of tin. I think he got scraps. They were bent and, what I mean, and mangled somewhat or be from use and things. And they didn't all have to be the same thickness or the same, come from the same place. They could have been from discarded chimney pipes, tin roofs, buckets made out of tin, um, straps of tin, shingles is another thing I've looked into. Shingles are about that size, the size he gives, tin shingles. Most of the shingles, though, that now survive are from very ornate buildings, because, plain old shingles, they probably wouldn't survive. But you can go on eBay and look up Victorian shingles, and there's like they have them wrapped in big piles of them, but they usually, like I said, have a design embossed in them. And so Joe Smith could have gotten hold of shingles that were sized similar and didn't have to do a thing to them, or cut them a little smaller as he needed them. But it's feasible. It's not impossible. Like
Yeah.
my friend Dan Peterson tries to make it sound impossible by saying, "Oh, he had a smelting operation, or foundry, a metal foundry going, huh? You know, he didn't have to do any of that stuff to get this put together. And the only hard part is getting, well, the witnesses that feel them through the cloth, and then the testimony is probably written by Cowdery, but or even Joe Smith, that's vaguely worded. But if you analyze some historical sources, it sounds like they saw them spiritually. And Martin Harris's statements makes it sound like they were in a cloth, just like he saw the plates before he saw the vision of the plates and angels. He saw the plates through a cloth himself, with his spiritual sight. He makes it sound like that's the eight witnesses' experience, because he says no one saw them uncovered naturally, not even Joseph Smith. Well, I don't think I don't know how he gets Joe Smith didn't see them, but I know that the source he's quoting D&C 17 that promises the witnesses, that the three witnesses, that they will see them with their spiritual eyes. Well,
Right.
even as my servant Joseph Smith has seen them. So he interprets that literally applying to Joseph Smith. But so that's the eight witnesses, and the three witnesses saw him in a vision, and only two of them saw him together. Harris was separate in
That's right.
And Oliver Cowdery never gave any description of what he saw or how he saw it. So we can't compare. Some of the people that heard the witnesses testify state that Oliver Cowdery or David Whitmer and Martin Harris gave different descriptions of the plates, that their descriptions of the plates didn't match.
Right.
And David Whitmer himself said he didn't know that, he doesn't think that Martin Harris saw everything that they saw, meaning his testimony was slightly different. And even if you have had three people having an experience and they describe it, they don't all have to see it the same or notice the same things, because that's the whole thing about Nephi and Lehi, about the tree of life. They notice different things.
That's true. Yeah.
And nobody sees nobody that's really into this metaphysical thing expects everybody to see exactly the same objective angel or an objective sight. It's perceived with the eye of the mind.
Right. I think that Graham Palmer held that view, like the eyes, their understanding.
Yeah, DC 76.
It was a literal like visitation or appearance, but more like a vision in their mind.
In that situation, you have Joseph Smith and Sidney Rigdon going back and forth. I see this, I see this, I see this, I see this, describing what they see. And then they have to get together and write this thing up. Well, they don't write it all. They even say they're not writing it all. They only can tell you 1/100th of what they saw. And Joseph Smith is in control of the written text. And that's what's written. And it only has the appearance in writing of being a shared with vision.
Right. Okay. And we could definitely dive in deeper into the witnesses another time.
So as you can see, I get very into the psychology of religion as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's sort of like what I try to bring to bear on the subject. Mormonism is such a huge topic.
So much.
But even religion itself, even without the complications of Mormonism, I try to learn about the psychology of religion, of anomalous, what is known as anomalous experiences, remote viewing, healing, faith healing, all that kind of stuff. I try to study, and that's one thing I say. If in Joseph Smith, if you're studying Joseph Smith, there's at least the potential of deception, a potential. You know what I mean? So you can't just know about what is claimed Joseph Smith. You have to know how deception works. If there's even a potential. You can't like sit back and go, oh, there's no way. There's no way this is no way that. You have to know all of this. And so there's some people that, so I try to exploit my training in magic, what do I say, stage magic, illusions, the study of flimflammery, the study of patent medicine, the study of, the spiritualists, just how in ancient times, fakery has been used by religious leaders intentionally to get people to believe, like you have this, usually magic is technology that other people don't know about.
Right. Okay.
You take a flashlight in a primitive culture and they think it's like magic. Show them a flashlight and they're overwhelmed. They can't believe what they're seeing kind of a thing. Well, there's been very clever, what I call clever people amongst us. Magic, the history of magic itself goes back to the fakirs of India, of actual magician, a lot of magic tricks, making rings, cups and balls, those rope tricks, things like that, go back to ancient times. This magic has been around. People have been doing tricks forever, and
Mm,
advancing as technology advances in order to keep ahead of people, you know, because
right.
sometimes you can't get away with some of the tricks that used to fool people. Um, and a lot of the um, um, uh, old old books that used to explain magic, folk, the magic, like the Magus type books, they also had in them how to perform sleight of hand, you know, how to get people to believe, how, because they used to mix fire handlers and snake handler, all these kinds of what street magic. So what we see up in modern times, we see magicians up on the stage, and what they're this really evolved from a guy named Robert Houdin, a French guy, where Houdini took his name from Robert Houdini, right?
Okay.
So Robert Houdin was one of the first to innovate magic done on a stage, where it's a performance. You're pretending like you're performing miracles. And you know that this is what's happening, meaning the audience is in on it too, but you're trying to be clever and fool them, and they're trying to figure it out and they can't.
Mm,
So the only assumption is, oh, it must be magic. But he's only pretending. He's acting as a real magician, but he's an actor.
right,
In
right.
ancient times, they didn't let you know that they're doing magic or sleight of hand. They did it and made you believe they had the power. And the same thing with some mentalists like Kreskin, uh, Jonathan Edwards, other people they're really magicians, and other magicians get very furious. Real magicians, they get mad at taking advantage of people because they're just doing tricks that magicians do. It's more in a safe place where they say, this is all a trick. I'm going to fool you and you won't be able to figure it out. And you're going to think that I really have these powers, but I don't. Right?
Right.
Well, there's other people that are unethical that do it and make you believe that they really have these powers, but they don't. Okay. Some of them do it for money, just for money, because they're frauds and con artists. But there's other people that do it, like readers, people that do readings, tell themselves that they're doing good for other people. They're actually helping them get closure with a dead relative.
Right.
These people actually want me to do this. Right? I'm not doing anything they don't want me to do. They want me to do it, and because they need me to do it, and I'm
And
going
you're
to help
helping
them.
them.
I'm
Mm,
helping them through this thing, this tough time in their life. Oh, and what's so bad about believing my relatives are alive somewhere and know what I'm doing, you know?
yeah. Gotcha.
So that kind of thing. It's, and some people tell themselves that this, I'm doing faith healing, and in the whole school of faith healers, there's some that are out and out frauds, want money, and they're hurting. They hurt people sometimes, but they tell themselves that um, this gives people faith and hope, and they believe the Bible, they get saved anyway. Well, so what's the harm? Or
Right.
some of them can even go further into the psychology, and they'll use fakery to raise the level of faith in the audience. Then all of a sudden, real miracles happen that this faith healer didn't have anything to do with. And so it must be God working through this means, that he approves of my methods. My methods of
Uh,
raising the faith level so that the real miracles can happen.
Even if there's deception or
Yeah,
trickery involved.
right. So
Okay,
that's the ends justifies the means kind of thing.
gotcha.
So, and
Gotcha.
that's sort of what I see Joseph Smith doing in a way,
Okay,
that he is causing people to be converted that weren't converted, that would have gone to hell. And he deserves, he's a real prophet, but he deserves the adulation and following that he's getting from these people that are following him. He's helping them, and he deserves their respect. And he's a real prophet, and he should be treated like one. He should be treated like one that has authority, and his word is just as good as God's.
gotcha.
So
Okay.
that's sort of uh,
Your
my nuanced position.
your position. No, I think we've talked, I think probably over 4 hours now.
Yeah,
I was looking to talk about, a little bit about the Book of Mormon translation. Would you want to go over it quickly, or would you rather do maybe another episode? I know
if
we've
we
been
could
talking for a
take a
while.
break, I would.
Yeah, do you want to take a break for a few minutes and we can come back?
Yeah, could you start like another recording or something?
Yeah, yeah, I could do
Because I
that.
feel like we're warm and we shouldn't stop.
Yeah, yeah. Although it's getting late
Okay.
my time, I could go a little bit longer, but I think
Oh
a break
yeah,
could
I
be good.
forgot. Yeah, it's 11.
About 11 my time, but I could go.
We can
I'm
always we
I'm
could always
absorbed.
do another day.
I'm absorbed in this conversation. I don't
Oh,
feel ready to sleep, but maybe a break could be good, and
a little
we'll start the recording here.
break.
We'll do another one
I'll
in a few
I'll
minutes.
it'll be on still.
Yes.
Yeah, can you edit it? Like I've done this with other interviewers where we took a break and they just left it on and then just edited it out or something.
Yeah, shouldn't be a problem with that.
Or stop it. So
Yeah.
you'll be here. I don't have to re-sign in.
I don't think so. We'll give it a whirl.
Okay,
All
I'll
right.
be back. I'll be back.
Thank you so much, everybody, for watching part 2 of my interview and discussion with historian and scholar Dan Vogel. In part 3, we'll be looking at the Book of Mormon translation. Was it translated using the Seer stone versus the Urim and Thummim? I'll be looking at Dan's views on some apologetics as well. If you have enjoyed this, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Please subscribe to my channel, Mormonism with the Mirth. If you care to donate, you can to my PayPal, stephen.murphy1996@outlook.com. Please check out Dan's YouTube channel and buy some of his great books. Thank you so much, everybody. I will see you next time.